It's Tuesday, the 14th of April. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Just weeks after the P5+1 nations and Iran declared their agreement on a framework deal to restrict the Shiite Republic's nuclear development, Moscow has announced its intention to supply Tehran with the sophisticated S-300 missile defense system. We get more from IBA's Margot Dukevich.
Israel has expressed concern over the Kremlin's decision to deliver the S-300 missile defense system to Iran after Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a decree ending a 5-year self-imposed ban. In 2010, Israel and the United States lobbied Moscow to cancel a contract to provide Iran with a sophisticated system. Speaking to reporters in Moscow, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov insisted the system will only be used for defensive purposes, saying Iran is committed not to threaten the security of any region, especially Israel. Tehran lauded the decision. The Iranian defense minister said the delivery of the S-300 missile system indicates the political will of the two countries to improve cooperation in all fields. Israel fears Iran may transfer the missile system to Bashar Assad's regime in Syria or Hezbollah in Lebanon, a move that would likely restrict the Israeli Air Force's freedom to operate. Intelligence Affairs Minister Yuval Steinitz said the proposed sale is the direct result of the legitimacy granted Iran following the framework agreement reached between the Islamic Republic and P5+1 countries over Tehran's nuclear program. He warned once sanctions are lifted, Tehran will exploit them for arms. The White House said it was examining the Russian sale closely, saying the sale could raise sanction concerns.
The United States has previously made known our objections to that sale, and I understand that Secretary Kerry had an opportunity to raise these concerns once again in a recent conversation with his Russian counterpart, Mr. Lavrov. I'm not in a position to obviously speculate on the decision-making process that Russia is engaged in right now, but I do think it's safe to say that Russia understands that the United States certainly takes very seriously the safety and security of our allies in the region. We're studying the details, and if this sort of arrangement were to move forward, it would raise serious concerns and even could potentially raise sanctions concerns.
The long-range surface-to-air missile system is capable of targeting aircraft as well as engaging ballistic missiles. Its radar can track objects over a range of 300 kilometers and relays the information to the command vehicle, where the potential targets are assessed and missiles launched. The system can guide up to 12 missiles simultaneously, engaging up to 6 targets at once. The missiles have a range of 5 to 150 kilometers and a maximum altitude of 30 kilometers. While no delivery date for the system has been mentioned, it is unclear whether it will take a number of years before Iran takes possession or whether the sale is imminent. Israel's Air Force is well versed in Russian technology, so it is safe to assume that it has the ability to counter any potential Iranian strike that would threaten Israel's security. Margot Dukevich, IBA News.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is asking Congress for space and time to complete the nuclear deal with Iran. The framework accord is coming under intense scrutiny by the rank-and-file members in both houses of Congress, and Kerry is hoping to blunt legislation that would give lawmakers the opportunity to approve or reject preliminary sanctions relief in the deal ahead of the final self-imposed deadline on June 30th.
I very much look forward to the opportunity to share thoughts, listen to questions, have a chance to have a discussion with the members of the House. And I'm particularly pleased to be able to go into some detail because there have been a lot of representations, misrepresentations, a lot of questions raised. And it's good to have an opportunity to really be able to discuss with people what is really contained within the parameters, and also to lay down some of the work that we have left to do. We have 2.5 months more to negotiate. That's a serious amount of time with some serious business still to do. So we hope Congress will listen carefully and ask the questions that it wants, but also give us the space and the time to be able to complete a very difficult task which has high stakes for our country. It involves major national security, major issues of potential conflict versus peaceful resolution, and we're very hopeful that this dialogue will be very productive.
Iranian Foreign Minister and Chief Nuclear Negotiator Mohammad Javad Zarif is reiterating his nation's insistence that all international sanctions be lifted before it will agree to any final nuclear deal.
Which is more fundamental problem, is for the United States primarily, but some of our friends in Europe, to basically change this paradigm that sanctions are an asset. As long as they keep that in mind, they keep that in the back of their mind, that they need to, one way or the other, hold on to these sanctions or allow themselves to be able to revert to them. I mean, as long as this instrument of coercion and pressure is kept there, I think people will never have the peace of mind that is needed in order to implement a good agreement. So what you need to do is to hold the government of the United States accountable for its international obligations, and governments are accountable for their international obligations. So as far as the agreement goes, whatever happens inside the U.S. and however they want to spin it, all the sanctions, economic and financial sanctions that have been imposed on Iran by the UN, by the EU, and by the United States must go in the first stage.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is charging that the nuclear framework agreement could encourage Iranian aggression. While speaking to a gathering of police recruits in Beit Shemesh, the premier said that Iran is reinforced by the international concessions and that the agreement permits it to retain the capability of arming itself with nuclear weapons while filling its coffers with large sums of money and pursuing its campaign of terrorism and aggression around the world. The Shin Bet security service thwarted a shooting attack on IDF soldiers by a Hamas cell made up of 2 Palestinian men formerly imprisoned in Israel. The incident was today revealed by the security service agency, which said that the terrorists planned to shoot soldiers on duty at a checkpoint just outside Jerusalem during the recent Purim holiday. The suspects were arrested in early March and are slated to be indicted in a West Bank military court in the coming days. And the Saudi-led airstrikes against Iranian-backed Houthi rebels may soon include clashes on the ground. Riyadh has been bolstering security at the kingdom's shared border with Yemen as concerns rise that the Shiite insurgents may incite sectarian violence as they advance into Sunni areas. Army units, tanks, artillery, and border guards are now being deployed to the Jazan region to counter any potential raids on Saudi border towns. Russian President Vladimir Putin held talks at his residence outside of Moscow with visiting Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. The Russian leader stressed that it is very important to hold consultations on a full range of issues, including the stalled peace process, and Abbas said that he remains committed to a diplomatic solution with Israel. The two also reportedly discussed the situations in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, as well as bilateral trade and economic relations and the development of tourism. Residents of the Armenian Quarter in Jerusalem's Old City are rejoicing in response to the Pope's declaration on Sunday, recognizing a genocide of their people committed by Turkey during the First World War. The local community is also celebrating the visit of reality television star and ethnic Armenian Kim Kardashian, as we see in this report from IBA's R.A. O'Sullivan.
Well, it's great news for us, and I just learned also that upon this announcement by the Pope, Turkey has withdrawn its ambassador from the Vatican. It's a good sign.
You know, Israel's policy has never been to use the word genocide. It says human tragedy, massacre. Would you like to see Israel take the same path that the Pope did and call it genocide?
It's a long overdue by Israel to accept the Armenian genocide as a genocide.
Here in the Armenian Quarter in Jerusalem, people are talking about the Pope's comments equating the Armenian massacre with genocide. But what's really getting them excited is the visit of the Kardashian sisters here in Jerusalem's Armenian Quarter. American reality TV star Kim Kardashian and her husband rap star Kanye West came to get their toddler daughter, Northwest, baptized at this medieval St. James Armenian cathedral. Kim's sister Chloe was also here, all followed by paparazzi and enthusiastic fans to Jerusalem's Old City.
It's a baptism that will take place. So Kim Kardashian's daughter will be baptized and become a Christian officially and a member of the Armenian Church. All I know that she's a famous personality. I don't know her in person. In any case, she's welcome with her family.
The Kardashians and West arrived from Armenia. Ariel O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Politics now, and Zionist Union Party Chief Isaac Herzog is denying reports that he met with Prime Minister Netanyahu recently to discuss the creation of a national unity government. There are nevertheless increasing signs that the formation of such a coalition may be underway. And here with more is IBA's political correspondent Eli Wogelenter.
Ayala Chasson of our own Channel 1 reported last night that Prime Minister Netanyahu and opposition leader Isaac Herzog held a secret meeting a few days ago in which they discussed the possibility of forming a national unity government. And despite the denial by Herzog, Chasson says that she stands by her story. Herzog hastened to deny the meeting took place, saying that it never happened, and that he and Netanyahu have not met alone since the election. Zionist Union issued a statement saying it categorically denies the report, and party sources added that it was all nonsense, much ado about nothing. According to Chasson, the meeting was held in secret, and close aides on both sides were kept out of the loop. The Likud issued a denial, saying that the things published about a so-called meeting of the Prime Minister and Bougie Herzog are not correct. Netanyahu reportedly told a senior Likud figure in recent days that he does not reject the idea of a unity government, understanding the importance of a centrist coalition both domestically and abroad. A unity government would signal to the United States and Europe that Jerusalem is interested in an arrangement with the Palestinians and would blur the series of steps those countries are liable to advance against Israel. And a centrist government might also lead to a renewal of peace talks with the Palestinians. As Netanyahu continues his public efforts to build a rightist and religious coalition, there are still major stumbling blocks that must be cleared. One of them is the Ministry of Religious Services, which is on the wish list of both Shas and Bayit Yehudi. Bayit Yehudi wishes to maintain its control of the ministry, while Shas leader Aryeh Deri wants to see the portfolio returned to Shas, which controlled it in the 18th Knesset. One of the compromise solutions being floated is that Netanyahu would serve as Minister of Religious Services, and a deputy minister from both Shas and Bayit Yehudi would serve under him. Bayit Yehudi leader Naftali Bennett is reportedly willing to live with such an arrangement, but Deri is not. It does appear that due to the delays in reaching agreement with potential coalition partners, that Netanyahu will ask President Reuven Rivlin next week for a 2-week extension, during which he will hope to sign agreements and announce his new government. Erin?
Thanks for that report. And in other news, it's been released for publication that IDF soldier Elad Selah has been indicted by the Jaffa Military Court on charges of espionage and the disclosure of classified information. The 25-year-old resident of the Bat Ain settlement has been in custody since being arrested in a joint Shin Bet military police operation last month for allegedly giving right-wing activists top-secret details of security operations in the West Bank. Investigators say that Selah, who is a private performing compulsory service in the religious Shachar program, has admitted to the charges. He was arrested after an investigation into whether Bat Ain residents had received advanced knowledge of an impending raid by security forces who were attacked earlier this year while trying to apprehend a core group of activists believed to be involved in acts of violence and vandalism against Palestinians. Rabbi Yoshiyahu Pinto today pleaded guilty to bribery charges and obstruction of justice as part of a plea bargain deal to receive a lighter sentence in exchange for testimony against a top police officer accused of accepting his bribes. After his plea, he was formally convicted by the Tel Aviv District Court and is expected to be sentenced to no more than a year in prison plus fines. Pinto's appearance before the court had been briefly cast into doubt when he complained of chest pains immediately after returning to the country from the U.S. yesterday. He has been ordered by the court to surrender his passport and not to leave the country. The IDF General Staff convened for an annual service at the Yad Vashem Memorial ahead of observance for Holocaust Remembrance Day on Thursday. Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenkot led the delegation, which included former President Shimon Peres, as they also marked 70 years since the Allies' victory over the Axis powers in 1945. Eisenkot called for the bowing of their heads in memory of the 6 million who perished, whose only sin, he said, was being born Jewish. He then said that the public can now rely on and take comfort in the country's military strength because, unlike in the past, the nation of Israel is prepared and capable of protecting itself. Today marks the 150th anniversary of the assassination of U.S. President Abraham Lincoln. IBA's in-house Confederate, REA's O'Sullivan, visited Lincoln Street in Jerusalem to hear what the locals know about Honest Abe.
We are on Abraham Lincoln Street in Jerusalem, whereas the people here call him Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was the U.S. president who fought the Civil War, a vicious fight against the Confederacy, and he freed the slaves. And it was exactly 150 years ago today that he was assassinated.
Abraham Lincoln.
Who was he?
He was the president of the United States.
What do you think happened 150 years ago today?
The beginning of the war, of the civil wars.
Close. He was assassinated.
Ah, damn it.
Abraham Lincoln.
1865.
1865 is the end of the Civil War.
And what happened to him?
He got assassinated.
Today.
Abraham Lincoln.
Right. Who was Abraham Lincoln?
He was a president.
And what happened exactly 150 years ago today?
Oh my goodness, I just woke up an hour ago. I like your flag though. My boyfriend has one in our window.
What street are we on?
Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln.
Who was he?
He was the 16th American president. He was assassinated today, 150 years ago.
I'm impressed that you know that.
Well, I'm well read.
From Abraham Lincoln Street, this is Ariel O'Sullivan for IBA News.
And staying with the presidential theme, in Florida, Senator Marco Rubio has now announced his intention to join candidates vying for the Republican nomination for the 2016 race. We get more on the latest contender from IBA reporter Alexandra Jen.
As the 43-year-old son of working-class Cubans, Senator Marco Rubio chose to announce his candidacy at a highly symbolic setting. He spoke from the iconic Freedom Tower in the heart of Miami, where thousands of Cubans first arrived in the U.S. after fleeing the communist regime in Havana. Rubio enters the Republican race as a junior senator from Florida. The former Speaker of the State House of Representatives is not considered a front-runner, but he has arrived with a powerful message for the future of America.
You see, we Americans are proud of our history, but our country has always been about the future. And before us now is the opportunity to author the greatest chapter yet in the amazing story of America. But we can't do that by going back to the leaders and ideas of the past.
Rubio stands out as a youthful contestant from a humble background. Not only does he appear to have the support of Latin and Hispanic communities, but he also appeals to a more diverse crowd of conservatives. The Miami-born senator rose to prominence with the help of the Tea Party and is known as a firm critic of the Obama administration. He's critical of both the current nuclear deal with Tehran and Washington's relationship with Jerusalem.
And if America once again accepts the mantle of global leadership. By abandoning this administration's dangerous concessions to Iran and its hostility to Israel.
Rubio now makes 3 in the official bids in the growing Republican race. He follows Tea Party favorite Ted Cruz and Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. There are still a number of potential contenders who have yet to announce their intentions. Jeb Bush, Chris Christie, Mike Huckabee, Scott Walker, Rick Santorum, Bobby Jindal, Carly Fiorina, Rick Perry, and Ben Carson are among those expected to run who may declare their plans in the coming weeks. One of these politicians will face the daunting task of confronting the likely Democratic candidate, Hillary Clinton, in the general election in 2016. Alexandra Jen for IBA News.
controversial German poet Günter Grass, once condemned by Prime Minister Netanyahu, passed away at the age of 87 of a lung infection. The writer, social activist, and recipient of the 1999 Nobel Prize in Literature first rose to prominence as Germany's moral conscience in the aftermath of the Second World War, and was praised for directly confronting and helping to atone for Germany's ugly past in perpetrating the Holocaust. But he stunned the world in 2006 by revealing that he served in the elite Waffen-SS under the Third Reich, contrary to his previous claims that he had only engaged in minimal wartime youth activity. Grass ignited further backlash in 2012 by publishing a scathing poem called What Must Be Said about Israeli opposition to nuclear development in Iran. It was immediately criticized as anti-Semitic by several senior German politicians, Jewish leaders, and others, including Netanyahu, who accused Grass of drawing a shameful moral equivalence between Jerusalem and Tehran, where the regime denies the Holocaust and threatens to annihilate the Jewish state. Now taking a look at local finance, and the shekel today put in another mixed performance, as were share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team tells us to expect a slight rise in temperatures tomorrow, although nothing to get too excited about because the levels will remain lower than normal for this time of year. There will also be isolated rain showers and northerly winds along the coast. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'll be back at this desk tomorrow to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. We now leave you with images of President Reuven Rivlin enjoying the opportunity to perform with beloved popular singer Shlomo Artzi at the president's residence in the capital, just days ahead of the nation's 67th Independence Day. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a wonderful evening and shalom from Jerusalem.
כמו עשן, אח שלי ישר, היא בחובי כמו חרעלים, כמי נעל חולים, עכשיו היא כאן. אהבתיה, אני יודע זאת פתאום.